What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and this video I want to talk about, at least at the time I'm recording this, kind of breaking news, and it's that Nintendo is actually suing Palworld, and we'll read over their press statement. I think this is fascinating. We'll kind of go over which side I'm on and kind of what I think about it, but first, let's get to the actual news part. So, it says Nintendo Company, together with the Pokemon Company, filed a patent infringement lawsuit in the Tokyo District Court against Pocket Pair Inc. on September 18th, today. This lawsuit seeks an injunction against infringement and compensation for damages on the grounds that Palworld, a game developed and released by the defendant, infringes multiple patent rights. Nintendo will continue to take necessary action against any infringement of its intellectual property rights, including the Nintendo brand itself, to protect the intellectual properties it has worked hard to establish over the years. And there you go. So number one, first thing I'd like to say is it's actually kind of shocking that they did it, and I guess that kind of goes to like the larger picture of things, right? Because one of the things you see a lot of people talking about is they forgot Palworld even existed. And now for me, like I played it for one night. I wasn't really into it. It's not really my type of game. My wife, my daughter, they played it a good amount. They generally liked it, but it does go to that where it's like the game kind of fizzled out. I mean, there's a lot of different things to talk about here, but like number one is there's actually not that many people in like context, right? Playing Palworld. Like it hits routinely 10 to 20,000 people a day on Steam, which is not terrible. In fact, that's actually quite high, and that would still put it in a, I think like a top 20 type, metric. But like it peaked at 2.1 million. It had like an incredible first 2-3 weeks, and it died, quote unquote. It dropped from that really quickly. Again, is the game actually dead? No, actually, it's got support. It's got decent support. I believe it's gonna, the rumor, PlayStation, all that jazz. I wouldn't be surprised if they announced something, maybe a Tokyo Game Show or something like that, getting a release date out there. Like, the game's still around, but in terms of like its all-time peak to now, it really isn't in the minds of people, honestly. So, like, that's one thing I'd like to say, where it's like, so Nintendo is choosing to do it now. Now, like, legal stuff does take forever, so it is very possible that they started this way back. They started this when it was popular, and you had the videos kind of discussing, is it stealing or is it not? And it was kind of complex. We'll talk about that in a second, but it's pretty possible that Nintendo started this lawsuit then, and you're just now hearing about it now. But it's just kind of funny at the end of the day that it happens or it comes out, and by the time it actually gets settled or there's a winner in this, Palworld is going to become even more irrelevant than it is. And again, like I'm saying that still kind of from like a respectful way. I know there's people that still play it, obviously. But again, it doesn't have that peak interest that it once did. Then there's, one thing I want to say is I am interested to see how it goes. Like Nintendo, I don't love some of their legal choices. I can speak as like a YouTuber myself. Like, they were one of the last companies to be like the handshake agreement with like creators and people online. Remember, like Nintendo was one of the last ones that would still either copyright strike or just at least take away the monetization of any video you made with Nintendo stuff in it. And that was that way, I want to say, till like 2016, 17, 18, somewhere in that range. They were one of the maybe like Bandai Namco, like a couple of them, but they were one of the last ones while everybody else was like totally cool with like allowing people to do Let's Plays or even like, say, a trailer breakdown. Good luck. If you wanted to break down, any of these mid 2010 games, you weren't getting paid on YouTube for that. So I've never really liked that part of it. I think a few months ago they went after emulators and they actually won, and that was a huge blow to like the emulation community. So they've done legally some stuff that I am not, on board with. I'm not really on their side. This one's tough because I don't know if I have enough info, and I don't mean that to be a cop-out. I really, really don't. I think ultimately they probably shouldn't do this, okay? So if I had to pick a side, I would probably pick Palworld side, okay? At the same time, though, and I don't, again, because I didn't look too deep, so this is just like entry-level stuff I'm about to say. I did see some videos, I did see some like articles, I did see some pictures on Twitter where like there definitely looked to be some inspiration lifted from Pokemon, like actual Pokemon, to these Palworld characters, and some of them were shockingly close. At the same time, there's been other games, and I think this was an argument brought up at that same time, right? There's been other games that have done it, and done it arguably more ripoff, more stealing, and Nintendo never went after them. So, again, like from an entry point, and I guess to cop out, I am interested to see how it goes. Like, it's tough because, like, if Nintendo wins, then it, like, the precedent, like, what does that do going forward, right? Then it's like, well, these kind of, like, pet-type animal things, you can't, you got to be really careful if you're making a game that has that, because Pokemon kind of is this, like, wide net, you know what I mean? So, like, the negative, if Pokemon and Nintendo wins, could be, like, that could really hurt future creatives, because then Nintendo maybe gets full of themselves and they say, okay, well, we're going to go after now this game and that game and that game, because now we have more, now we proved that they're kind of stealing, so we'll go after ones that are even further, like we'll reach even further and try to sue others. And that can very honestly, realistically happen, right? So in that way, I don't want it to happen. I guess I would just kind of like proof, like maybe it would be the most fun in this situation to kind of like see, well, like, how were these designs from Palworld? Like, how did they come up with them, right? Because, again, like, I don't know. I saw things that looked very similar. I also saw things that looked very different. And I also saw other games that looked very similar. And Nintendo and Pokemon didn't have a problem with those. So, again, like, why'd they go after Palworld? Well, Palworld proved, like, hey, and people rightfully went after Pokemon, right? It was kind of like a jabbing moment. And I've seen people say it even right now. Why don't you take the money? And I don't know if I'm saying this, but it's something I've seen. Why don't you take the money that you're using to sue them, and why don't you make a good Pokemon game? And the reason I won't, like, double down on that, I haven't actually played many of the last couple Pokemon games. My wife has, my daughter has. Some of them have been good, some of them have not been good. So I can get down generally with, like, yeah, the Pokemon game's quality is at a low, and we need to turn that thing around. And instead of complaining that other games are close to your type of game, why don't you just make a better game? And when I say better, I mean better than what you have done, and just better than everybody. Like, that's the whole point anyway. Pokemon was the best of its type. Nobody can touch Pokemon. And still, I would say relatively nobody can touch Pokemon. Like, Palworld did great, but the next mainline Pokemon games are going to do outstanding. Like, no matter how terrible they run, and if they do, I don't think they're actually going to run bad, but, no matter how they are, they're going to do unbelievable numbers. It just always happens, right? So I think they kind of have to figure themselves out. I think you can, like, pretty safely say that, right, without any kind of pushback. Like, they got to figure themselves out, and ultimately, as I said earlier, it is probably the best move to just not do this. I think it is pretty risky if they win, like, what it proves, to them, I guess, like, going forward. But also it's like, yeah, they made a lot of money, and their game, or their, the creatures or whatever are close. Some of them are closer than others, and you might have a problem with that, and that's fine. But either you're going to have to go after everybody or not at all. And ultimately, like, again, it doesn't matter, because, like, to me, like, the OG Pokemon, like, that's another thing with, like, more modern Pokemon as it's gone. I think they've run out of, like, like, good ideas. So, like, but there's a reason why Pokemon is so good. So just make a good Pokemon game, and nobody will care about, or if they do care about Palworld, it won't matter, because you're going to make a lot of money too, and they'll make money, and it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I stand on all this. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.